I have the same feeling, the taste of death should be this taste. Senkaname said, rarely not contrary to Ikimara Jin. I think it's very good, the taste of death is suitable for this current scene. Taking a few steps forward, Aizen looked at the lineup of Gotei 13 in front of him, with a proud look. It has been a long time. Aizen. With suppressed anger on his face, Hirako Shinji looked at Aizen opposite him. He had waited too long for this day to meet Aizen. Kill him and wash the shame and pain that he and others had experienced 100 years ago. It is you, Captain Hirako. It is really a long time. I did not expect to be a failed experiment product. You can still live in the world. There was no expression on his face. Although he said Captain Hirako, Aizen's face had a somewhat mocking expression. Ah. A sharp scream came out of his mouth, and Wonderweiss did not care about the atmosphere at the scene and shouted loudly. Why is this child always like this? It's really noisy. Now I don't feel nervous at all. I really don't like this point of him. He turned his head slightly to look at Wonderweiss behind him, and his tone of Ikimara Jin was a little distressed. All the sounds produced by Wonderweiss are meaningful. You just watch quietly. There was no change on his face. Tosen wanted to say flatly. Compared with Ikimara Jin's dislike for this child, he was unexpectedly congenial with this child, so he could vaguely understand the voices made by this child. Just as the voice of Tosen fell, a huge pitch-black hole appeared on the body of the one-eyed monster, and then along with the other side's vomiting, a large expanse of Minos Grande came out of the other side's mouth. No way. These are actually all Jillian. Looking at the large group of Jillian standing up on the ground in the distance, Soul Society and others were shocked. No one expected that Aizen would have such support. Although it was really nothing for captain-level people like them, this number, no matter how they looked at it, was not a negligible degree. If they were disturbed by these hollows in battle. It's time for us to appear. As Hirako Shinji finished his words, a mask appeared on the faces the visored. At the same time, their Ryuryoku also changed greatly. The Ryuryoku between Shinigami and Hollow was very similar to those Arrancar, but extremely powerful. These guys, what kind of guys are they? Each and every one of them is terrifyingly strong. Feeling Ryuryoku from the visored, Omira said with a trembling voice. Those guys with masks, Ryuryoku was actually much stronger than him. The few people from the Mask Council each displayed their abilities and shone on the battlefield. In just a moment, they killed all of those Jillians. How is it? See how we are now proficient in using the power of Hollow. In a flash, he appeared in front of Aizen. Hirako Shinji waved his hand and dissipated the mask on his face. Suddenly, he waved his hand and slashed at Aizen's head. Come and settle it. Hirako Shinji's Zanpakuto was about to cut down his body, but Aizen's face did not show any expression, as if he did not notice. Sure enough, just as Hirako Shinji's Zanpakuto was about to cut down, a knife light suddenly inserted from the side, and it was also aimed at Hirako Shinji's head, mercilessly cut down. A light flashed in his eyes. Hirako Shinji's body suddenly leaned back, and his arm pressed in the air. At the same time, his body borrowed the strength of his arm and rose into the air. Zanpakuto in his hand changed a direction and cut down on his opponent's body. Although his eyes could not see, Senkaname still keenly felt the aura. His body shook and avoided Hirako Shinji's attack, and his face became a little serious. Interfering in other people's battle halfway, it is really a dirty trick. Then, if you are killed by this kind of dirty trick you say, you will be very unhappy. Holding the saber with both hands, Tosen changed the posture of holding the saber. His tone was full of confidence. With new strength, he would not lose to anyone. Bang! A force came from his Zanpakuto. It was not the sound of swords clashing, but the sound of someone hitting Zanpakuto with a blunt weapon. Kamamura. Feeling the familiar Ryuryoku in front of him, Senkaname's face slightly moved, but it was only for a moment, and then his face turned cold. His eyes glanced at his former friend, and a trace of regret flashed in the eyes of Sajin Kamimura, and then he turned his eyes to Hirako Shinji opposite him. "Let me help you, masked guest. Is this okay? Help me, a guy with unknown origins. But your appearance is also very abnormal." Looking at the appearance of Sajin Kamimura in front of him, Hirako Shinji spoke in a relaxed tone. "Just now, you stepped forward to face that group of Jillian, just this point alone is enough to judge that you are on the same side. I have decided to fight with you, you are not allowed to have any objections." Masked guest. With his back to Hirako Shinji, Sajin Kamimura said with an unquestionable tone. His tone revealed a kind of determination, which was a kind of trust that could not be refused. This kind of determination made Hirako Shinji standing behind him feel uncomfortable. "You make me very uncomfortable like this. I am not good at dealing with this kind of thing." Waving his hand, Hirako Shinji looked unhappy. This situation was really not what he was good at dealing with. During the conversation, the Visored Legion who had defeated the Jillians had appeared in other battlefields again. According to the battle situation that they had seen outside, they had assigned the ownership of the enemy. Assisting Kiraku and Yukitake to deal with Vladimir Eric were Rose and Love, assisting Soifon and Maeda to deal with Espada No. 2 were Hiyori and Lisa. Hachijin and Kuna Mashiro were still cleaning the remaining Jillians with Kensei who was still there. "Are you the former test objects that Aizen said before? A mere Shinigami dares to steal the power of the Jillians, you are really looking for death." Looking at Rose and Love who appeared in front of him, Vladimir Eric's tone was still arrogant. He did not have any other emotions because of the number of opponents he had. To him, no matter how many enemies he had, there was no difference. A mere Shinigami? I can't pretend that I didn't hear this. Waving his hand to remove the mask on his face, Rose looked at the handsome guy in front of him with an unhappy face. He had never seen such a beautiful guy, whether it was Shinigami or human, but "We are not Shinigami. We are just a Visored Legion. If we have to add a name, we are just employees of the coffee shop." Crush down, Tengamaru. I can't agree with you either. Play, Kinshura. Rose and Love each held Zanpakuto and stared at the opponent in front of them. There was a flash of caution in their eyes. A guy who could make Kiraku Shunsui and Sure Yukitake in a sorry state was not a simple opponent to defeat. Interesting. The corners of his mouth curled into a mocking smile. He did not see Vladimir Eric make any movements. His body had already appeared beside Rose and Love. With a clench of his hand, a purple sword made of flames appeared in his hand. He slashed down at the two of them with an indifferent expression on his face. A trace of surprise flashed through the eyes of Rose and Love. They only noticed it when someone approached them. However, although they could not keep up with the speed of the other party, the two of them were not simple people. When the other party came to their side, their bodies immediately moved. The gigantic Tengamaru in Love's hand seemed to have no weight at all. With a whistling sound, the huge Zanpakuto smashed down at the guy beside him with incomparable speed. Although he was late, Love was the first to strike. Just as Vladimir Eric swung out his attack, his Zanpakuto had already smashed onto his opponent. Compared to Love's incomparably huge Zanpakuto, Vladimir Eric's tiny body was simply insignificant. However, that incomparably tiny body contained a great amount of power. He raised the purple fire sword in his hand and effortlessly blocked Love's attack. As he dodged to the side, a glimmer of light flashed in Rose's eyes. The golden whip in his hand suddenly swung out, and the golden whip was like a dragon that wrapped itself around Vladimir Eric's body. Kinshura Sanada no what? How can it be? Seeing that his own Zanpakuto had entangled his opponent, Rose pulled his arm and tightened his golden whip. Then, he stretched out a finger and placed it on the whip. Just as Rose was about to say it, a hint of shock flashed through his eyes. His kinshira had actually been broken away by someone using brute force. Moreover, it was a very tiny fellow. With a shake of his body, his Ryuryoku sent out a burst of energy that shook off the whip that was wrapped around his body. Vladimir turned to look at Rose, who was on the other side. His empty hand suddenly stretched out, and purple flaming swords appeared in the void one after another. The tip of the swords turned and aimed at Rose, who was at the side. "Rose, get out of the way." Feeling the aura emitted by the flaming swords, Love's expression changed and he shouted. He knew the power of these flaming swords. Just one sword was enough to block his full power attack, let alone so many. Love could feel the dangerous aura, and Rose naturally could also feel it. He moved his body and was about to withdraw Zanpakuto. Humph. It's too late. Vladimir Eric suddenly stretched out his hand to grab the Zanpakuto, which was held by Rose, and suddenly exerted force. How is this possible? This guy's strength is actually stronger than Kensei. As this thought flashed through his mind, Rose's body uncontrollably rushed towards Vladimir Eric. This is bad. Looking at the purple fire sword that was right in front of him, Rose was shocked. If he was hit by such an attack, even if he did not die, he would lose a layer of skin. Bush Goma. A spinning attack flew over from the side, disrupting the trajectory of the purple fire swords that were about to hit Rose, and flew past Rose's body. Casually interfering in other people's battles, what a vile personality. Turning his head to look at Kyoraku Shunsui, a trace of displeasure flashed in Vladimir Eric's eyes, and then he put it away. However, it doesn't matter even if there are more of such enemies. If I can kill one with a wave of my hand, even if all of you attack, it will only be a few more waves. What arrogant words. Holding the broadsword with both hands, Kyoraku Shunsui looked at the enemy opposite him and said. But this guy is really strong. Even if there are 2 more people on his side now, Kyoraku Shunsui is not sure of winning. No one knows what means the other side is hiding. Moreover, his previous probing did not get any valuable information. I didn't expect to fight alongside you. Looking at Hiyori and Lisa standing next to him, Hitsugaya said after a moment of silence. Because of the special training he had done in Wuyang's store, he was not unfamiliar with these people. On the contrary, he was quite familiar with these people from the Visored Legion. In fact, I really don't want to fight with a little bean like you. A guy like you can be the captain. I still don't understand it now. Hiyori carried Zanpakuto on his shoulder and said without caring about the darkening face of Hitsugaya. You. Hiyori is right. Such a young child is actually qualified to be the captain. I am very strange. Has the current Soul Society fallen to such a state? You 2 guys, shouldn't it be enough? A Tiger Tooth girl and a Book girl are actually here to fight with me. I am Soul Society's captain. TSK. Little Bean. Little Byakuya. Bastard. Sizzle. A blade suddenly appeared between them, interrupting their conversation. Anyway, thank you. If you mean that you didn't report your matters to Soul Society, then forget it. I just met someone with combat ability in the modern realm, and there is no need to report to Soul Society. After a moment of silence, Lisa took the lead and took action, putting her Zanpakuto and scabbard together. With a flash of light, a huge weapon appeared in Lisa's hand. Smash, Haguro Tonbo. Stepping on the ground, Lisa rushed forward, and the huge Zanpakuto in her hand suddenly stabbed at the body of the Espada No. 3. Stepping back, his body slightly yielded, and he raised his knife upwards, deflecting Lisa's attack. Before Soyata had time to make any other moves, a Zanpakuto suddenly attacked from behind his head. Twisting his body at an angle that did not conform to common sense, he avoided Hiyori's sneak attack. Soyata raised his foot and kicked Hiyori's body. Dragon Canister. The wings on the back of Hitsugaya in the distance shook, and the body quickly rushed to Soyata. His Zanpakuto's sword was aimed at him, and a cold air emitted from his Zanpakuto. Since this guy's body recovery ability is unreasonable, just trap him first, and deal with him after dealing with Aizen. With this idea, Hitsugaya's body advanced quickly. Dang! Shinji's Zanpakuto collided with Ikimara Jin again. Hirako Shinji's body retreated. Before, he had fought with Ikimara Jin hundreds of times. This third-seat little devil of his own team in the past, now he has the strength to fight with himself in a direct confrontation, and even is not at a disadvantage. Sure enough, he is worthy of Soul Society's once-in-a-century genius character. Aizen Susuke. Yamamoto Genryusai opened his eyes and looked at Aizen in front of him. There was a trace of fierceness in his eyes. For the rebellious mind, he trampled on Soul Society and the justice of Godai 13. He absolutely had no reason to let him go. Yes, then, what are you going to do, Yamamoto head captain? In the case of seeing his subordinates and the elites of Godai 13 being ravaged by my subordinates from Hueco Mundo. Looking at head captain in front of him, Aizen's tone was full of pride. Although he was very afraid of head captain's strength, but now, he did not have to be too careful. He could feel that Hijayaku had begun to respond to his heart. The fusion between them had begun. Now he was walking on the road of becoming a god, and no one or anything could stop him. I don't know if your blade is still sharp. Is it? Then you will personally experience my blade, with your body. There is a faint layer of heat floating on the body. Yamamoto Genryusai's eyes seem to have a flame burning in them. Zanpakuto, who is held in his hand, slightly unsheathed, revealing a shiny blade, emitting a hot breath, but it makes people feel cold. Shwa! A huge axe suddenly flew from the side, facing Aizen's body, but it turned into ashes before touching Aizen's body and disappeared. At the same time, there was a strong Ryuryoku, which was the aura of the Espada No. 2. In this short period of time, Baragan has been killed by Ashoda Hachijin Soifon and Maeda. Shwa! A petite figure suddenly appeared in front of Aizen, blocking between him and head captain. Aizen Susuke, the great sinner of the soul world, die for me. Although one of Soifon's arms disappeared, the momentum was more powerful. Carrying the momentum of defeating Baragan, she directly issued a challenge to Aizen. The body moved, and dozens of Soifon figures flashed in front of Aizen. It was difficult to distinguish which was the real body of Soifon by the naked eye. The corner of the mouth was slightly raised, looking at Soifon who was constantly flashing in front of him. Aizen's face was not surprised at all, but showed some ridicule. What, have your body completely recovered? Seeing Muyang, who was originally sitting quietly, suddenly stand up, Unohana Retsu asked in confusion. Now, Muyang's Ryuryoku has not fully recovered. Not yet, but this is enough. Standing up and moving his body, Muyang revealed a smile on his face. His Ryuryoku has recovered more than 80%, and can return to the modern world now. As for the remaining Ryuryoku, he should be able to recover on the way back. Thank you, Captain Unohana. Nodding slightly to Unohana Retsu, Muyang pulled out his Zanpakuto. Bankai, Hikaze no Kiru. A bright light flashed, Muyang looked up at the sky, felt the Ryuryoku above the sky, and then turned and walked into the Garganta. Let's go, Kusu. With a slash of his saber, a huge crack appeared in the air. Muyang lifted his foot and walked in. Then, Suzuki Kusu followed closely behind. A path made of spirit particles appeared under their feet. The two of them quickly ran forward. In front of the unknown, what awaited them was an intense battle. Aya, has that annoying fellow, Muyang, already left? Accompanied by a series of sounds, a black shadow gradually approached. It was Kuratsuchi Mayuri, who had returned from a rewarding journey. After killing the virtual circle scientist, he searched around and found a lot of precious research materials. Therefore, his mood could not be any better. Captain Kuratsuchi, you seem to be in a good mood. Looking at Kurotsuchi Mayuri who was gradually approaching and Kurotsuchi Nimue who was pushing a huge car beside him, Unohana Retsu said. Of course, I can't wait to start studying now. As he said, Kurotsuchi Mayuri's fingers danced uncontrollably in the air, looking impatient. Boom! With a loud noise, a cloud of dust rose around them, covering Kurotsuchi Mayuri's body. This barbarian, really, if you beat that guy to pieces, how do I dissect him? The eyes turned with dissatisfaction to Zaraki Kenpachi who was fighting against Yami. Kurotsuchi Mayuri's tone was not polite at all. The guy who fought with swords 8, just looking at the size, he knew that it must have a great research value. Although it was not easy to dissect, if it was broken by sword 8 in the battle, it was even harder to study. That, Captain Unohana, Kurosaki, he. Ishida Yuri ran over from the side, looking at Unohana Retsu and asked with a bit of urgency on his face. Unohana Retsu did not speak and looked up at the sky. Could it be? Looking up at Unohana Retsu's eyes, Ishida Yuri did not open his mouth to ask anything, and a terrible fluctuation suddenly came from the sky. The mighty Ryuryoku seemed to want to drown his body. Just feeling the oppressive aura, his body trembled slightly. What kind of guy is Kurosaki fighting with? This kind of Ryuryoku is simply unheard of. He is stronger than anyone I have ever met before. His heart trembled slightly. A sense of unease suddenly rose in Ishida's heart. In the face of such an enemy, could Kurosaki really deal with it? Although he had to trust his companions, that kind of enemy, no matter how he looked at it, was not a level that he could be at ease to let Kurosaki deal with alone. Ishida, can you please take me up? Above the sky dome. Orihime walked over and crossed her arms in front of her chest. There was a hint of fear on her face, as if she was enduring some huge panic. Even her body was trembling slightly, and her eyes were sparkling with tears. Student Kurosaki, he is currently fighting someone on the rooftop. Although he knows that even if I go up, I can't do anything, he still wants to go up. At least don't let Kurosaki face such a terrible enemy alone. Ishida Yuri was silent for a moment, looking at the expression on Orihime's face that seemed like she was about to cry, and finally nodded. Great, thank you, Ishida. Shaking his head slightly, Ishida Yuri walked to the side of Orihime. A disc made of spirit particles appeared under his feet, lifting their bodies up. His body gradually rose up, approaching an unknown place above the canopy. However, the closer he got to the canopy, the more he could feel the terrifying Ryuryoku above the canopy. The terrifyingly strong Ryuryoku made his heart tremble slightly. What kind of person could release such a strong Ryuryoku? This Ryuryoku, who was as vast as the sea and seemed to want to drown everything, was simply beyond his imagination. Boom! Just as Ishida Yuri was slowly moving toward the canopy with Orihime, an even stronger Ryuryoku suddenly appeared above the canopy. The dense Ryuryoku seemed to fall from the sky. Although his hands could not touch it, the black Ryuryoku in front of them was so thick that it seemed like he could reach out and touch it. It's simply a monster. Feeling that the air around him was so thick that it seemed to turn into substance, Ishida Yuri was silent for a moment, and then squeezed out a few words from his mouth. Perhaps only a monster could emit this kind of Ryuryoku. It was completely different from the previous encounter, and it was also different from what he felt from the sky before. It was thick and heavy, and it was completely different from Ryuryoku. At the same time, above the sky dome. This is the second stage of Resurrection. Among the 10 blades, only I can carry out the second stage of liberation, the Segunda Resurrection. Even Lord Aizen has never seen this appearance. I will turn your body into ashes to feel the insurmountable gap between us. Standing high up in the sky, he looked down at Kurosaki Ichigo. There was no emotion in Okuyura's eyes, as if he was looking at a dead person. Although it was difficult to explain the previous fight, after he showed this posture, the fake Shinigami in front of him could only die. He put his hands together, and a light flashed between his palms. Then Ulquiorra pulled his hands, and a long spear-like thing with a dangerous aura appeared in his hands. Lanza del Relmpago. The long spear in his hand turned and aimed at Kurosaki Ichigo's body. Ulquiorra looked at Kurosaki Ichigo with a cold face, without any emotion in his eyes. Just stand there and don't move. I still can't perfectly control this move. I don't want to attack you at a distance of 0. He waved his arm and the Lanza del Relmpago in his hand suddenly shot out. Just as he said, he couldn't control this move well. The trajectory of the Lanza del Relmpago that he shot out had a slight deviation, brushing past Kurosaki Ichigo's head. Boom! The Lanza del Relmpago that flew past Kurosaki Ichigo's head landed on the ground in the distance. A violent explosion immediately erupted. Although it was very far away from where they were fighting, the air current from the explosion still rushed to them, blowing Kurosaki Ichigo's clothes to the point of rustling. His head was slightly stiff. Kurosaki Ichigo's body paused for a moment. This kind of power was beyond his imagination. If he was hit by that kind of attack, he would definitely be killed in an instant. The light in Ulquiorra's hand flashed, and another Lanza del Relmpago appeared in his hand. Seeing this scene, Kurosaki Ichigo's body shook again. This kind of absurd attack could be used without limit. Although he was secretly shocked, seeing the Lanza del Relmpago in the hand of Ulquiorra opposite him again, Kurosaki Ichigo was suddenly refreshed. He did not dare to ask the other party to make mistakes again. He waved his hand on his face, and a mask appeared on Kurosaki Ichigo's face, and Ryuryoku on his body suddenly became stronger. His body moved, and a layer of black Ryuryoku appeared on top of Kurosaki Ichigo's Zanpakuto. He stamped his foot and was about to rush towards Ulquiorra's body. Shwa! Kurosaki Ichigo had just raised his foot, and Ulquiorra's body suddenly appeared beside him, with deep indifference in his eyes, and the Lanza del Relmpago in his hand swung down at Kurosaki Ichigo's body. Seeing Suzuki Kusu's hesitant expression, Muyang turned around and asked, "What is it? Do you have anything to ask? Kimura, what do you plan to do after you arrive in the modern realm? What should we do?" Naturally, it is to defeat Aizen and thwart his plot. Their footsteps did not stop, and Muyang answered without hesitation. How? The footsteps were slightly paused, and Muyang's heart sank. Suzuki Kusu asked him this question. Although he knew that Aizen was very strong, whether it was what he saw from the manga in his previous life or what he felt through several battles in this life, it proved that Aizen was very strong, but until now, he could still fight with Aizen head-on. However, at this time, Aizen should have begun to merge with Jayaku. After the fusion with Jayaku, he can't estimate the extent of strength. Although he saw it in the manga in his previous life, it was a manga after all. It was different from the present reality. He didn't see it with his own eyes. He didn't know what extent Aizen was at, or whether it was an existence that he could defeat. Seeing Muyang's reaction, Suzuki Kusu also knew the answer to the question. Muyang should not have the confidence to win. What he could do now was to go all out. How is your Ryuryoku recovering? Turning the topic away, Suzuki Kusu turned to ask Muyang's physical condition. It was already very difficult to deal with Aizen. If the body has not fully recovered, it will be really bad. Almost, I can feel that my Ryuryoku is slowly recovering. When we arrive at human world, it should be able to recover to more than 90%. Don't forget, my own medical Kido is also very outstanding. After saying this with a smile, the silence between the two people returned again, leaving only the orderly footsteps of two people in the Garganta. After the battle begins, you have to be careful. With your ability, if you are careful, even in the face of Aizen, you can protect yourself. Muyang suddenly opened his mouth and said with a faint concern in his tone. I know. The corner of his mouth was slightly raised, revealing a happy smile. Suzuki Kusu's heart was sweet. The opponent is Aizen, his Kaika Suigetsu is very tricky. I will establish a connection between you and me. With my ability, if you go all out, you can still ensure that you will not be disturbed by his Kaika Suigetsu to a certain extent. At least you can find his position correctly. Well, it is already the last battle. After this fight, you can have a good rest. Seeing Soifan, who divided into several figures in front of him to attack himself, Aizen's face did not show half a surprise, and there was a flash of disdain in his eyes. He stepped forward and appeared in front of Soifan. Zanpakuto in his hand slashed down, and countless flickering figures around him disappeared, leaving only a figure with a surprised face cut in front of Aizen's Zanpakuto. Puff! A burst of blood spurted out from her chest. Soifan's eyes were full of disbelief. The speed that he was proud of was actually so insignificant in front of Aizen. He did not use his own side of the extremely fearful Kaika Suigetsu. He only relied on pure speed and strength to easily defeat her. Captain. Seeing Soifan, who was cut down by Aizen, Maeda's face showed a trace of panic. His body rushed forward, grabbed Soifan, who was unable to fall, and looked at the opposite side with concern. Damn it! Feeling the power of her body gradually passing away, Soifan's eyes were full of unwillingness. She actually didn't even touch the body of the enemy and was defeated. Whether as a Shinigami, or as the captain of Gotei 13 and the commander-in-chief of the Onmitsukido, it was a great shame. So, who is the next one? Aizen turned his head and looked at Soul Society and others on the side. With a bang, the sky behind Aizen cracked like a mirror. Shwa! The clenched Zanpakuto in his hand emitted a silver-white radiance, and Muyang cut down behind Aizen with an indomitable momentum. Boom! A crystal appeared at the back of Aizen's head, stretching and shrinking, blocking the blow that Muyang had been charging for a long time. You really wasted a great opportunity to attack. Muyang, the back of the neck is the most vulnerable part of any creature. Do you think I will come to human world to fight without any means? Without moving, Aizen turned his head to look at Muyang behind him, and his eyes were calm. Hearing Aizen's words, Muyang's face was as usual, but the corner of his mouth pulled out a meaningful smile. Seeing the smile on the corner of Muyang's mouth, Aizen instinctively felt a bad feeling, but before he could react, a figure had flashed in front of him. The pure white Zanpakuto drew a perfect arc in the air and cut into Aizen's lower abdomen. Sizzle! A wound appeared in front of Aizen, and blood sprayed. With a movement of his feet, Aizen's figure appeared in the distance. There was a smile on his face, and there was no unhappiness because of being hit. It is a good tactic. Use yourself as bait, and let Suzuki Kusu launch an attack. Even if I am also hit, from this point of view, your plan is indeed successful. But you ignored one thing. With Suzuki Kusu's strength, even if you can hit me, you can't kill me in one blow. It has no effect on the battlefield at all. Aizen's face was full of confidence. Looking at Muyang and Suzuki Kusu, his eyes were calm. He was not afraid of anyone now. No matter who stood in front of him, in the end, he could only become a stepping stone for his success. Is that so? Muyang slightly nodded to Suzuki Kusu on the side, indicating her to stand aside. Next would be the battle between him and Aizen, and no one else could be on the side. Seeing Suzuki Kusu retreat to the side as he said, Muyang was sure. He turned to look at Aizen, stretched out his arm, and Zanpakuto aimed at Aizen's head. A sharp aura was emitted from Muyang's body, and a powerful Ryoryoku slowly rose from his body. Muyang turned his arm, and Aizen on the opposite side suddenly leaned his head. Then there was a sudden violent explosion behind Aizen, and an invisible attack split the buildings from the middle, leaving an unfathomable crack on the ground. Interesting, is that also a wind attack? First, it turned the invisible wind into a tangible attack, and then it became invisible again. As expected of Muyang, his control of strength is really much stronger than the average person. You are powerful, and you easily avoided it. Looking at Aizen's relaxed appearance, Muyang's face did not change, his arm shook, and another invisible attack was waved. The face did not change, Aizen's body slightly sighed, another attack cut through him, leaving a horrible mark on the ground behind him. It seems that Kimura does not need our help. He has such a strong power with a wave of his hand. It is really terrible. Looking at the huge gully made by Muyang's attack on the ground, Lilinet spread out his hands and turned to Stark and said. Hey, Stark, let's go over there. I see that Reincarnation is very strong. Several of them can't beat him. Let's go and kill that guy. Stark, aren't you the most powerful Hollow? Looking at the few people who were fighting over there, Lilinet turned her eyes and said. For the handsome Vladimir Eric, she had long been not pleasing to the eye. No. Rubbing his head and sitting on the ground, Stark looked around the battlefield and said without hesitation. What? Why? This is not our war, and with our identity of Reincarnation, although Kimura-san does not care, Soul Society will inevitably have some qualms about it and will not completely trust us. Harabel stood on one side, crossed his arms, and answered Stark's words. She naturally saw the situation at the scene clearly. She and others did not have any position to make a move at all. Moreover, now it seems that they do not need to make a move. With a step, Muyang appeared on the side of Aizen. With a turn of his arm, Zanpakuto cut off his body. With a flash of light in his eyes, Aizen's body side avoided Muyang's slash, and then his arm picked up and cut down on Muyang's arm. In the face of Aizen's attack, Muyang's face did not change, and a light flashed on his empty palm, and then he directly reached out to block Zanpakuto in front of Aizen. The palm clenched, and in the eyes of the other party, he grabbed Aizen's Zanpakuto in his hand. Muyang threw his arm and suddenly cut Aizen's body. Puff. A wound appeared on Aizen's body, and the blood spilled. What happened? Why do you want to distance yourself from me? Looking at Aizen who was retreating, the corner of Muyang's mouth curved into a smile. Sweeping the wounds on his body, Aizen's eyes slightly fluctuated. He really did not expect that Muyang could actually take his attack empty-handed, which was really beyond his imagination. If Muyang injured himself through other means, Aizen could still accept it, but now, he was actually caught by Muyang empty-handed, and was also injured by the other side, which made his heart suddenly shake a little. Muyang moved faster, and Muyang was just about to take advantage of the victory to pursue. A purple flame suddenly shot in front of him, the purple flame emitting a hot breath, making the footsteps of Muyang who was just about to move stop. Muyang, you are finally here. I have been waiting for you for a long time. Turning his head to look at the other side, what entered Muyang's eyes was a familiar face, that handsome face, and that demonic purple fire. Muyang would never forget it. Vladimir Eric. Do you still remember me? That's great. I will take your life. A hint of evil flashed in his blood-colored eyes. Vladimir Eric declared as if he could easily take away Muyang's life. With a movement of his body, Rose threw out the golden whip in his hand and wrapped it around his body. I already said that it was useless. His body shook, and just as he was about to break free of the whip that was wrapped around his body, Vladimir Eric suddenly had an uneasy feeling in his heart. His body subconsciously swayed, and a huge Zanpakuto suddenly passed through his chest. His body shook and broke free from the whip. Vladimir Eric retreated. Looking at Kuraku Shunsui who crawled out from the shadow on the ground, his eyes revealed a trace of anger. This guy actually used such a despicable method to sneak attack him. You have angered me, bastard. His face was full of anger, and a powerful Ryoryoku burst out from Vladimir Eric's body. At the same time, countless purple flames appeared. With a thought, the purple flames surrounding his body all condensed into long swords, emitting a destructive aura, making Rose and Kuraku Shunsui feel a shiver in their hearts. Go to hell. The swords around his body shot out in all directions. Each of them carried a destructive power. Moreover, Those swords seemed to be able to sense Ryoryoku which surrounded Kyoraku Shunsui and the others. No matter how they dodged, those swords could always follow behind them. Bang bang bang. Accompanied by several violent explosions, not only Kyoraku Shunsui and Rose, but even Love, who was hiding at the side waiting for the opportunity to attack, was also hit and fell powerlessly in the violent explosion. This time no one interferes. I will kill you, Muyang. Several pairs of wings behind him flapped, and the figure of Vladimir appeared directly in front of Muyang, blocking between Aizen and Muyang. The blood-colored pupils showed a bit of bloodthirsty taste. Although it had been 100 years, there was no great hatred at that time, but in the heart of Vladimir Eric, Muyang, the guy who trampled on his pride, must be killed with his own hands. Are you ready to die, bastard? With his hands on his chest, the purple flames around his body continued to burn, and then evolved into various shapes around Vladimir Eric's body, emitting a dangerous aura. As the voice of Vladimir Eric fell, the things evolved from purple flames in the air were all aimed at Muyang. Muyang's heart suddenly tightened, and he felt a sense of danger. Danger. The sense of crisis in his mind flourished. Muyang did not choose to take it head-on. Instead, he constantly dodged these attacks. Sure enough, the weapons condensed from flames immediately exploded after falling to the ground. It seems that I don't need to shoot. Looking at Muyang, who was forced to run around by the attack from Vladimir Eric, Aizen corner of the mouth slightly warped and turned to look at Yamamoto Genryusai standing in front of him. Why, is it head captain's turn to personally shoot so soon? It seems that Godiai 13 is really deteriorated. The eyes swept across several battles around. Chur Hitsugaya is working with Lisa and Hiyori to deal with the number 3 Espada. Although he has always had the upper hand, under the attack of the other party who is not afraid of death, the battle can't end for a while. Senkaname was fighting with Kamamura, Kensei was fighting with the little ghost with a big sword on his back. Kuna Mashiro, Rose, Love, Yukitake, and Kyoraku were all unable to participate in the battle. Ashoda Hachijin, who had lost one hand, could no longer continue to fight, and those deputy captains were still in the treatment. Hirako Shinji moved, and before he could appear in front of Aizen, he was stopped by Ikemara Jin, who was standing on one side, with a strange smile on his face, and Ikemara Jin's performance was very relaxed. Well, are you going to personally deal with me, the so-called traitor of Soul Society, or waiting for your subordinates to end the battle? The eyes turned and fell on several Arrancar below. Aizen's eyes slightly paused, from the few Arrancar. He felt a sense of threat. The strength of the other party is absolutely not to be underestimated. At least it is comparable to the first few Arrancar existences. And most importantly, these people have not seen his Zanpakuto, which means that they will not be confused by their own Kyoka Suigetsu. If they fight like this, it may be a little troublesome. Or as the leader of Shinigami, do you want to help the few Arrancar over there? The closed eyes suddenly opened. A ray of light flashed from the eyes of head captain. The arm moved, and his Zanpakuto was suddenly unsheathed, driving a burst of hot flames, and suddenly cut down on Aizen's body. Bang! The scene in front of him shattered like a mirror. Aizen's figure suddenly appeared behind Yamamoto head captain. Zanpakuto in his hand suddenly pierced through his armpit and stabbed down at Yamamoto head captain's body. The sharp blade penetrated Yamamoto head captain's body effortlessly, bringing a burst of blood. Although he had turned in the shortest time, Yamamoto head captain's speed was still a bit worse. Aizen's Zanpakuto pierced through Yamamoto head captain's abdomen, and a few drops of blood dripped on the blade. Hey! The body was pierced by Aizen's Zanpakuto, but Yamamoto Genryusai's face suddenly showed a smile. Pa! Suddenly reaching out and grabbing Aizen's arm, the blue veins on Yamamoto Genryusai's clenched arm burst, and the strong arm grabbed Aizen's arm, not letting him have any possibility of breaking free. Aizen Susuke, I caught you. Looking up at Aizen in front of him, Yamamoto Genryusai's face was serious. Interesting, what if you catch me? Is the hand you caught really my hand? There is no trace of panic on the face. Aizen looked at the old face of head captain in front of him and said easily. There is no worry. Just look at it with your eyes and feel it with your skin. It is indeed like this, but I am not going to misjudge the Ryuryoku emitted by Zanpakuto who stabbed into the body. Holding Aizen's arm, Yamamoto head captain slowly raised his right hand holding a knife. The fierce flame on Zanpakuto's upper layer burned, emitting an amazing heat. Just approaching, it made people feel like they were about to be burned. It's over, Aizen. I'll use this old man's move to burn your body, soul, and even your ambition into ashes, nothing will be left. The light in his eyes was bright, and Zanpakuto of Yamamoto Genryusai cut down. A figure flashed and suddenly appeared in front of Yamamoto Genryusai, grabbing his Zanpakuto in his hand. Just as Yamamoto Genryusai's Ryujin Jaka fell into the hands of the other side, his Zanpakuto seemed to burn everything in an instant. Nani? Seeing the change on his own Zanpakuto, Yamamoto Genryusai's eyes showed a hint of surprise, and the palm holding Aizen suddenly showed a moment of relaxation. The arm moved, the foot pointed, and Aizen quickly broke away from the restraint of Yamamoto Genryusai and retreated a few steps away. Looking at the figure holding Yamamoto Genryusai's Zanpakuto not far away, the corner of the mouth showed a satisfied expression. The arm moved and pulled out his own Zanpakuto from the other side's hand. Yamamoto Genryusai's body quickly retreated a few steps. In the face of the unknown, the first consideration was to pull away the distance. And why did all the flames on Ryujin Jaka disappear? Let me tell you. Seeing the confusion on Yamamoto Genryusai's face, Aizen's face took a few steps forward with a smile and looked down at Yamamoto Genryusai standing on the ground and explained, your Ryujin Jaka is the strongest Zanpakuto, this is beyond doubt. If you fight seriously, your combat ability should be above mine. However, if you give up all the other abilities and only strengthen one of them, you can fight against the strongest Zanpakuto. Satisfied to see the surprise in Yamamoto Genryusai's eyes, Aizen pointed his finger to the standing Wonder Weiss. He, Wonder Weiss, is the only modified Erincar, and his resurrection is called Extinguer. It is a Erincar specially made to seal your Ryujin Jaka. With a smile of victory on his face, Aizen looked at head captain who was shocked in front of him. This feeling was really good. Even Yamamoto Genryusai, who was known as the strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years, was defeated on his way forward. As you can see, the ability of Extinguer is flame that seals Ryujin Jaka. For this ability, Wonder Weiss lost his language, knowledge, memory, and even rationality. In the face of him exchanging everything for the ability. You have nothing to do. Goodbye, Yamamoto Genryusai. As Aizen's voice fell, Extinguer's body suddenly rushed forward, stretching out a pair of big hands to grab the body of Yamamoto head captain, as if to crush his body. The gap between the fight looked over here, and Muang's mouth curved into a smile. Aizen thought that by sealing head captain's Zanpakuto he could win. Really, Aizen's information is too bad. The strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years, not just relying on Zanpakuto. A purple flame flew over Muang's head. Vladimir looked at Muang with a gloomy face. It had been so long. Although Muang had been running around, Vladimir Eric himself had not caused any damage to Muang. This result was not satisfactory. You still have time to look at other places when you are fighting with me. Go to hell. As he shouted, a large amount of flames appeared around Vladimir Eric's body again, rushing towards Muang's body. An all-around attack that had no blind spots surrounded all directions around Muang's body. Buzz. A silver light flashed, and all the flames that rushed towards Muang suddenly disappeared. Seeing the scene in front of him, Vladimir froze. He did not see what happened just now. What did you do just now? Why don't you do it again and then watch carefully? With a relaxed expression on his face, Muang teased Vladimir. After dragging on for so long, his Ryuryoku finally recovered completely in the battle. "You bastard!" His expression became a bit gloomy. Countless flames appeared around Vladimir Eric once again and surged towards Muyang's body. Just as those flames rushed towards Muyang, Vladimir Eric's eyes stared fixedly at Muyang's body, wanting to see something from it. A silver light flashed, and in a daze, a crack appeared in front of Muyang. Those surging purple flames were all sucked into that crack. So that's how it is. Spatial power? Seeing the gap in front of Muyang, Vladimir Eric had a flash of realization in his eyes. The unknown was the scariest thing. Now that he knew the other party's ability, it was easy to deal with. He stretched out his arm and two long swords condensed from purple flames appeared in his hand. Because of the extreme compression of the flames, the two swords appeared to have a kind of amber sparkling color. It looked exceptionally bright and dazzling, and the terrifying aura emitted from it made people secretly shocked. The wings on his back flapped, and the body of Vladimir Eric appeared directly beside Muyang. The purple long sword in his hand directly stabbed towards Muyang's body. He retreated and avoided the opponent's first attack. Muyang slashed his saber at the opponent's chest, and there was a faint layer of silver radiance on Zanpakuto. Wang. The other hand held the long sword to block Muyang's attack. Vladimir Eric loosened his right hand and then held the long sword in his hand. He waved it backward and slashed at Muyang's body again. Muyang suddenly exerted strength in his arm and firmly pressed down on one of Vladimir Eric's long swords. His body suddenly received an even greater force. The movement of Vladimir Eric's other hand also paused for a moment. The moment his opponent's body stopped moving, Muyang's body rose into the air, avoiding the strike that his opponent had swung back at him. Moreover, the moment his body rose into the air, a ray of light gathered in Muyang's hand. Heido number 33 Sukatsui. Boom! Looking at the explosion in front of him, there was no expression on Muyang's face. This level of attack was not enough to deal with the other party. Sure enough, the smoke and dust that rose because of the explosion had not dispersed yet. A crystal purple long sword suddenly shot out from inside and was aimed at Muyang's forehead. With a wrong step, the long sword flew past Muyang's body. At this moment, a figure silently appeared behind Muyang. A purple long sword slashed down on Muyang's body. Muyang, who had his back to the other side, curled his lips slightly. He actually did not make any movements. Although he was surprised by Muyang's inaction, in a battle of life and death, time was of the essence. It was not enough for Vladimir Eric to slowly think about it. Seeing that Muyang did not have any reaction, he directly increased the strength of his hand. The long sword slashed down on Muyang's back. If he was hit by this strike, even with Muyang's strength, he would definitely be seriously injured. The long sword in his hand slashed down, cutting through Muyang's body. However, a hint of shock appeared on Vladimir Eric's face. Although his long sword did cut through Muyang's body, the feeling from the long sword was nothing. What's going on? His body paused for a moment due to shock, and the moment Vladimir Eric's body stopped, Muyang's Zanpakuto pierced through his armpit and stabbed into Vladimir Eric's chest. The pain from his body instantly pulled Vladimir Eric back to his senses. There was no time to think at all. His body directly responded, and he swung his backhand toward Muyang's body. Regardless of whether he hit the other party or not, Vladimir Eric retreated directly. At this time, he had to keep a distance from the other party. He had to analyze the other party's ability first. You chose to keep your distance now. You gave me too much time. I have completely recovered. Feeling that Ryuryoku had recovered to his peak, Muyang looked relaxed. He looked at his injuries with a gloomy expression. Vladimir Eric did not reply. The attack just now was indeed strange. It was clear that his Zanpakuto had sliced through his body, but his body did not seem to exist. However, if his body was just a phantom, why was his attack able to stab him? The injuries on his body were not fake. When he thought of this, Vladimir Eric only felt that the wounds on his body were even more painful. Although the injuries were not serious and would not cause any damage to his movements, Muyang's attack just now had dealt more damage to his mind. In this game, he had already fallen into a disadvantage. Looks like you don't understand what happened just now. Then he'll let you experience it again with your own body. He raised his foot, and when he stepped down, he was already in front of Vladimir Eric. The Zanpakuto in Muyang's hand swung down without any fancy moves. His speed was not fast, but the long sword that Vladimir Eric raised was unable to touch Muyang's Zanpakuto. Instead, it directly passed through Muyang's Zanpakuto and body, and once again cut through the air. The Zanpakuto in his hand slashed down again, leaving a scar on Vladimir Eric's shoulder. Muyang's face was relaxed. How is this possible? He retreated again, and Vladimir Eric looked at Muyang with a hint of fear on his face. This guy seemed to be in a different space from him. That's right. Space. A light flashed in Vladimir Eric's mind. It was space. Muyang's ability was space, which he had already known before. Now, it seemed that Muyang was still using the ability of space, but it was different from before. Before, he had transferred his attack through space. Now, Muyang had used space to transform his body between the realms, and achieved this goal. After understanding this point, Vladimir felt relaxed. The other party was still using the ability of space transfer. It was just that in the beginning, it was to transfer his own attack, but now it was to transfer his body. As long as this was confirmed, it would be easy. It seems that you seem to understand a little. Seeing the flash of realization in Vladimir Eric's eyes, Muyang said. He still did not show any emotions on his face. He just raised his foot and his Zanpakuto again. The blade flashed and slashed at Vladimir Eric's head. However, Vladimir Eric did not react at all. He just stood there blankly and watched as Zanpakuto chopped down at his body. A bloody light flashed and another wound appeared on Vladimir Eric's body. The moment Muyang's Zanpakuto cut into his body, a light flashed in Vladimir Eric's eyes. He suddenly reached out and grabbed Muyang's Zanpakuto. I caught him. Holding Muyang in his left hand, Vladimir Eric had a ferocious expression on his face. The sparkling purple long sword in his right hand became darker and shorter, but the aura it emitted became even more terrifying. Sizzle. The short sword in his hand swung down, but there was another sound of tearing through the air. Vladimir Eric used all his strength to attack and actually hit the air again. Looking at the surprise on Vladimir Eric's face, a hint of a smile flashed in Muyang's eyes. Taking advantage of the moment when the other party relaxed, he suddenly pulled out his own Zanpakuto. Moreover, the moment he pulled out Zanpakuto, he swung down again, leaving another wound on Vladimir Eric's chest. The wound was so deep that the bones could be seen, almost cutting the other party's body in two. How could this be? With one hand on his chest, Vladimir Eric had a look of disbelief in his eyes. Why couldn't he cut Zanpakuto's body even though he had already caught him? Don't you understand? My use of abilities is not as rough as you think. I can completely control every specific part of my body when it comes to the transformation between the realms. The gloomy expression on his face gradually disappeared. The injury on Vladimir Eric's chest slowly recovered. His regenerative ability was not excellent. It was difficult to recover from such injuries. The following battles were even more difficult. After all, he had to fight the enemy with such injuries. However, do you think your spatial ability has no weaknesses? With a cold expression on his face, Vladimir Eric's voice was low to the extreme. The 3 pairs of wings on his back trembled slightly, and a fluctuation came from above. This guy. Looking at the 3 pairs of wings on Vladimir Eric's back, Muyang's eyes darkened slightly. He could clearly feel the pressure coming from the other party. I'll use my destructive fire to distort your space. As he spoke, traces of dark purple flames appeared around Vladimir Eric's body. When those flames appeared, Vladimir Eric's body immediately became blurry, and his figure seemed to be distorted. The moment those flames appeared, Muyang's body suddenly paused. The other party's flames actually completely distorted the space around Vladimir Eric. This way, his previous set of actions would not work. The space around Vladimir Eric's body was completely distorted, and his moves were completely useless. However, if the third method cannot be used, use the second method. As his body broke away from his previous state, Muyang raised his arm, and Zanpakuto aimed at Vladimir Eric's body. With a flash of light, Muyang's body had already appeared behind Vladimir Eric. Pooh! Blood sprayed out from Vladimir Eric's body again. Even with such a powerful force, he was still unable to block Muyang's attack. Just like before, he did not see Muyang's movements at all. His body had already been hit. A deep sense of shame appeared in Vladimir Eric's heart. You haven't died from my attack. You are already worthy of being proud of yourself. At least in my opinion, there are not many people who can block it. Turning to look at the tottering Vladimir Eric, Muyang said. However, the words that came out of his mouth were really hard to believe to be words of praise. You bastard! Turning around and looking at Muyang who was standing in front of him, Vladimir Eric's eyes were burning with flames. The 3 pairs of wings on his back were trembling, emitting terrifying flames. The space around him suddenly distorted even more, and even turned into a vacuum zone. Seriously, you're making it hard for me to do this. Seeing the distorted space around Vladimir Eric, Muyang shook his head. From his point of view, Vladimir Eric seemed to be standing in a dark hole, making it impossible for people to get close to him. If I refine my spatial abilities, it can be divided into third method, second method, and first method. In fact, I prefer another name, point, line, plane. Muyang's Zanpakuto shook the space in his hand a few times, and Muyang explained softly to Vladimir Eric in front of him with a relaxed expression. But because you twisted the space around you like that, my third method plane cannot be used, and now you twisted the space again, even the second method line is not very good. In fact, if you calm down and fight with me properly, you might be able to turn the tables, but you are too anxious. Although you are very strong, perhaps it is because your talent is too high and you are born so strong, so you have not experienced many battles. Now you are acting so young and inexperienced in battle. He raised his foot and slowly walked forward. As he walked, he would occasionally knock away Vladimir Eric's attack. Muyang walked to the front of Vladimir in a relaxed manner. A light gathered at the top of Zanpakuto. The first method point. Zanpakuto waved in his hand. Muyang looked at the space in front of him and was silent. He could not help but feel a little sad. In terms of strength, Vladimir Eric was definitely ranked high among the people Muyang had met. However, because his strength was too strong, he always crushed the enemy without thinking. Because the enemies he had met in the past were too weak. He did not need to think much about it. However, this tactic, when encountering an enemy who is not equal to him in strength or even better than him, can only be tragic. There is a strong strength, but there is no heart that is enough to control that strength. In the end, it can only be a tragedy like him. The real strength of a person is still the strength of the heart. In the heart, there is a flash of firmness in Muyang's eyes. The palm of the hand holding the knife is tight and turned to look at the battle situation of Aizen and Yamamoto Genryosai. Boom! At the moment when Muyang turned his head, a powerful column of flame suddenly rose from Yamamoto Genryosai and Aizen. Not good. A lightning suddenly flashed in his brain. Muyang's heart tightened. The time he wasted here seemed to be a little long. The foot moved and just rushed to the battlefield over there. A bright knife flashed, and a Zanpakuto was inserted in front of Muyang. Looking at the ugly Zanpakuto in front of him, Muyang's pupils shrank. He followed Zanpakuto to look over there, and what came into his eyes was a silver-haired teenager with a fox-like smile on his face. His eyes stared at Ikamaru Jin's face, and Muyang's voice gradually became cold. "Are you serious? Ikamaru Jin. Now there are only a few Ryuryoku that can be clearly felt." Just when Muyang and Vladimir were fighting, Chur Hitsugaya and the other three joined hands to kill Espada number 3, but then they fell under Aizen's Zanpakuto because of their impulse. As for the others, they all have the same ending. Now even Yamamoto head captain Ryuryoku is weak. How can it be? Don't be so scary, Kimura-san. I just want to ask you to wait for a while. Spreading his hands, Ikamaru Jin looked at Muyang innocently, and his Zanpakuto, who had been restored to his original state, was facing Muyang's body. Boom! And just as Muyang stopped, another terrifying flame column burst out from the ground. The huge flame column was in the shape of a knife, and the moment it appeared, it destroyed everything around it. Even though they were far away, Muyang still felt a terrifying aura from that attack. This is had number 96. ITT Cass, worthy of head captain. Even if he was tricked by Captain Aizen, he still made the most correct judgment in an instant. Turning to Flame Pillar over there, Ikamaru Jin's face was full of amazement. "Are you sure you want to be my enemy?" Muyang looked at Ikamaru Jin and asked again. "How can that be? I said I just wanted to ask you to wait a while." Saying that, Ikamaru Jin stepped aside and put away his own Zanpakuto, indicating that he would not block the way again. Looking at Ikamaru Jin with deep meaning, Muyang lifted his foot and rushed to the place where the flame column burst in the distance. Shwa! Leaping out of the hat of Yamamoto Genryusai, Aizen was also slightly embarrassed. He did not expect that in that case, Yamamoto Genryusai would still send such a terrible attack. It was too careless. Just as Aizen's heart was saved for his mistake just now, the space behind him suddenly shattered. Kurosaki Ichigo with mask jumped out of the Garganta, and the black Ryuryoku in his hand rolled and slashed at Aizen's shoulder. Puff! Landing on the ground, Aizen staggered and his body was half bent. Originally, because of the attack of Yamamoto head captain, he suffered a lot of damage. His Ryuryoku lost a lot. Kurosaki Ichigo's sneak attack just now caused his body to be directly injured. There was a deep scar on his shoulder. It's not over yet. Ah! After one hit, Kurosaki Ichigo's momentum was even more powerful. Once again, he raised his own Zanpakuto, and a strong Ryuryoku gathered on the blade. When Aizen stood up straight, Zanpakuto in his hand was in front of him, effortlessly blocking Ichigo's attack, with a smile on his face. What is so funny? Looking at the smile on Aizen's face, Ichigo's tone was a little cold. At the moment of arriving in human world, he felt that everyone's Ryuryoku had become very weak, and the person who caused all this was the guy standing in front of him. You didn't have time to kill me, that was my last gap, Kurosaki Ichigo. Puchi. A Zanpakuto suddenly pierced Aizen's chest from behind. The blade stopped in front of Ichigo's chest, and on Zanpakuto's blade, a few drops of blood slowly dripped. The edge of the dual blades, this is Kimura-san's Zanpakuto. Seeing Zanpakuto in front of him still dripping blood, Kurosaki Ichigo was secretly shocked. When did he make a move? He did not even notice it. The last gap? Not necessarily. Muyang's voice sounded behind Aizen. His body was close to Aizen, and Zanpakuto in his hand penetrated his body. Although he said this, Muyang's heart was not at ease at all. He could now clearly feel the sense of crisis from Aizen, which was more powerful than the beginning. Do you think you hurt me? A trace of blood flowed from the corner of the mouth, but Aizen still looked indifferent. With a wrong step, Muyang flashed away and looked at Aizen with serious eyes. Do you think that this is also an injury? During the conversation, the wound on Aizen's shoulder that was cut by Kurosaki Ichigo quickly recovered, and the injury left by Muyang on the chest was also slowly recovering. It only took a few blinks of an eye to recover, and there was no scar left. Super regeneration. Seeing what happened to Aizen, Kurosaki Ichigo's eyes tightened. He had seen a lot of similar situations, but Aizen seemed to be somewhat different from what he had seen before. This is not a super speed regeneration. Look clearly, he is not a hollow. Staring at Aizen, Muyang felt that it was tricky. Aizen's current appearance seemed to have begun to merge with Jayaku. Yes, this is not hollowification, this is just a defense instinct to protect the owner. What are you talking about? Halfway through his words, Kurosaki Ichigo stopped. There was no need to say the rest of the words. When he saw what was revealed under Aizen's torn clothes, he already understood. It's Jayaku. There was a bead embedded in the center of the chest, shining with a blue light. Kurosaki Ichigo had seen that thing when he was in the Sokayaku Hill. It was something that Aizen was after. Glancing at Aizen, Muyang knew that it was impossible to easily solve him at this time, so he was too lazy to plan anything else. The following things could only rely on hard strength. But before that, the body flashed and disappeared from Aizen. Muyang left Aizen alone to Kurosaki Ichigo. Anyway, according to Aizen's temper, he would not really kill Kurosaki Ichigo. Is it okay to give the battlefield to that child? It's okay, with his strength, it is not easy to kill Aizen. On the other hand, are they okay? Looking at the captains and the people of the Visored Legion on the ground, Muyang showed a trace of worry in his eyes. It's okay. The treatment of Suzuki-san was very timely. Although they were not cured, their injuries were stabilized in the end. Now after receiving my treatment, there will be no danger to their lives. However, the arm of the head captain. Looking at the severed arm of the head captain, Muyang was slightly silent. He did not expect that in the end, head captain's hand was still broken. If it is possible, let Orihime help head captain Yamamoto heal after the battle is over. Captain Unohana, although it is embarrassing to say this, can you please protect them? I may not be able to care about the situation here after the battle begins. Of course, this is my responsibility. Thank you. Turning to look at Suzuki Kusu on the side, Muyang did not speak, but Suzuki Kusu already understood what he meant. She nodded heavily, indicating that she would also protect the people here. Stark, Harabel, I am sorry to trouble you here. Take care of me. Don't worry, we are not just here to watch the play. Sitting up, the dejection in Stark's eyes faded, revealing a rare bit of seriousness. He was always very attentive to what Muyang told him. That's good. As soon as the voice fell, Muyang took a step and his body directly appeared behind Aizen. His body rotated a few times in the air, and Zanpakuto in his hand slammed down on Aizen's body. Dang! Although he was talking to Kurosaki Ichigo, he did not completely relax his vigilance. The moment Muyang's attack fell, Aizen's body suddenly twisted and blocked Muyang's attack. Boom! The arm holding the knife trembled, and Aizen's body also sank slightly, and the ground under his feet suddenly cracked. It was because of Muyang's slash that the ground was destroyed. It is really unreasonable to interrupt other people's conversation. Looking up at Muyang in front of him, Aizen said with a smile. His previous conversation with Kurosaki Ichigo was about to reach the key point, but was interrupted by Muyang's sudden move. In the face of Aizen's criticism, Muyang's face did not have any color. Boom! Just as Muyang's body just withdrew, the blue slash fell on Aizen's body, and suddenly burst out a fierce roar. I was still thinking that it was almost time for you to go on stage, Kurosaki Ishin. As his body landed in front of Kurosaki Ichigo, Muyang said to the person beside him. Old is it, Dad? Looking at the familiar yet unfamiliar figure in front of him, the muscles on Kurosaki Ichigo's face twitched. A drop of sweat slid down and he asked hesitantly in a trembling voice. This face and figure was indeed his father. However, what was the matter with the Death Tyrant equipment on his body? And that slash just now, that powerful power, the powerful Ryoryoku that was emitted from his body, what exactly was going on? Turning around, Kurosaki focused his gaze on Kurosaki Ichigo. Then, with a dark face, he walked in Kurosaki Ichigo's direction without saying a word. Hey, say something. Old man. Looking at the stranger in front of him, Kurosaki Ichigo's body trembled slightly. His heart was in chaos. What was happening in front of him was beyond his understanding. Was this guy still his father who liked to play tricks? Dong dash. Walking to the front of Kurosaki Ichigo, Kurosaki Ishin did not say anything, raised his head, and directly smashed the head of Ichigo, knocking his body out. It hurts. You damn. Walking to the front of Kurosaki Ichigo who was lying on the ground, Kurosaki Ishin turned his head and looked at Aizen and Muyang over there. His figure flashed and directly disappeared with Ichigo's body. Their Ryoryoku disappeared. It seems that he has set up a very powerful enchantment. After feeling it, Aizen, who found that he really could not perceive Kurosaki Ishin and his son's Ryoryoku, whispered. Do you still have time to pay attention to others in front of me? Zanpakuto in Muyang's hand raised horizontally and aimed at Aizen's body. Seeing Muyang's action, Aizen's heart suddenly tightened. He was injured by Muyang's move before. He knew that this was the beginning of a move of Muyang. A silver light flashed, and Aizen instinctively leaned over his body and waved out Zanpakuto in his hand while dodging. Puff. A wound appeared on Aizen's arm, and blood splashed. He was actually hit again. The eyes fell on the wounds on his body. Aizen's eyes were slightly cold, the same move, he was actually hit twice. Sure enough. Muyang stopped and his eyes fell on the back of his hand. There was a very shallow wound on the back of his hand. A few drops of blood seeped out. Although it was very shallow, it was enough for Muyang to be surprised. In that case, Aizen could actually organize an attack at the same time of blocking. Then, Muyang's Zanpakuto was covered with a layer of silver radiance. Muyang's body suddenly disappeared in the air, and then countless silver threads appeared around Aizen's body, as if to wrap up his body. Puff. As countless silver threads flashed on the side of Aizen, blood sprayed out from Aizen's body. Although he had tried to block it, the attack organized by Muyang still left countless scars on Aizen, even if those scars were not deep. Hoo-hoo. The body fell to the ground. Muyang's body bowed slightly, and his breathing became a little hurried. He launched multiple attacks in an instant. Although it did bring some injuries to Aizen's body, it also made his own body a little overloaded. I have to say, your strength is really beyond my expectations, Muyang. The wound drawn by Muyang's Zanpakuto squirmed and slowly recovered. Although the appearance looked very miserable, the expression on Aizen's face had slowly calmed down. Even such an injury would recover quickly under the ability of Jayaku. Now he did not need to worry about anything at all. A temporary loss did not mean anything. Although I have long regarded you as a factor that cannot be ignored, the evaluation of you is still too low, but this is also something that can't be helped. After all, you have never shown your full strength. For your upper limit of strength, it can only be speculated, and there will inevitably be errors with the real situation. However, from now on, all of this has no meaning. Aizen's words have not finished. Kurosaki Ishin's body suddenly appeared beside him, the light on Zanpakuto in his hand flashed, and he swung down at Aizen's body. Boom! Muyang took a step and appeared in the distance, standing side by side with Kurosaki Ishin, and the place where Aizen stood before had been completely covered by the rising smoke and dust. Step, step, step. The smoke and dust dispersed, and Aizen stepped out of it, looking calm. The attack of Kurosaki just now did not affect him. I have already said that all this is meaningless. The will of Jayaku has gradually begun to understand my thoughts. When they heard Aizen's words, Muyang and Kurosaki Ishin were shocked. Kurosaki Ishin was confused by Aizen's words, while Muyang was shocked by the meaning revealed in Aizen's tone. Jayaku began to understand Aizen's idea, which meant that the next battle would become more difficult. What are you talking about? Looking at Aizen in front of him, Kurosaki asked calmly. You still don't understand? I mean, Jayaku actually has a will. In my opinion, this is simply a dream. No wonder you can't feel it. It was only after I became the owner of Jayaku that I learned that he had a will. As if he was eager to show off after obtaining a new toy, Aizen explained to Muyang and Kurosaki Ishin with a smile. What do you think Jayaku's ability will be? Control two things that are completely opposite the boundary between Shinigami and Hollow? No. Jayaku's real ability is the heart that exists around the body, and the ability to absorb and materialize. What? Seeing the horror in Kurosaki Ishin's eyes, Aizen felt satisfied. Do you still not understand? I mean all the miracles that happened around Kurosaki Ichigo, Kuchiki Rukia, and Kisuke before, in fact, they are all manifested through Jayaku's will. What are you talking about? The more he heard Aizen's explanation, the more puzzled Kurosaki Ishin was in his heart. The words that constantly came out of Aizen's mouth completely subverted his previous cognition. At this time, when he heard Aizen's words, he could not help screaming. The reason why Kisuke mistakenly thought that Jayaku's ability was to control the boundary between Shinigami and Hollow, was because it was his own wish to create Jayaku. Kuchiki Rukia passed all the Ryatsu to Kurosaki Ichigo, causing her to lose Shinigami's strength, because he could not get rid of the pain of killing Shiba Kaien. And the reason why Sato Yasutora and Orihime on the well were awakened was because they cursed their own powerlessness from the bottom of their hearts. And I perceive the real power of Jayaku. No. If I am aware of it, there is actually a grammatical problem. To be precise, it should be that I understand that it is not like what Kisuke said, it is the ability to control the boundary between and Hollow. Because if that ability is true, Hirako Shinji should not be completely turned into the Visored. Hirako Shinji's hollowification is at the same time of the hollowification experiment, and the ability of Jayaku is confirmed. And the experiment was really successful, and the ability of Jayaku was activated by Kisuke, so Hirako Shinji completely evolved into the Visored. And I used the ability of Jayaku to send Kuchiki Rukia to Kurosaki Ichigo. Intoxicated by the pleasure of controlling everything, Aizen's voice suddenly changed. Of course, Jayaku's ability still has a limit. Jayaku's ability is to materialize the surrounding hearts. However, if the target does not have the power to complete him, it is impossible to achieve. In this meaning, it can be said to be the power of guiding to the direction of hope. It's just that the creature is really incredible. The things that are expected by the insignificant heart can also be realized. You. After listening to Aizen's words, Kurosaki's single-minded face was full of anger, and the momentum of the whole body gathered, as if it would break out in the next moment. Boom! A bright saber light suddenly flashed past Kurosaki's side, and a figure was sent flying by the saber light, fiercely crashing into a building in the distance. Throwing away Ikemara Jin's Zanpakuto, Kurosaki Ichigo wiped the corner of his mouth. Looking coldly at the guy on the opposite side, in the battle just now, he didn't take advantage of it at all. Yo, blocked it? If not for a coincidence, then you are too powerful. Looking at Kurosaki Ichigo in front of him, Ikemara Jin praised him. Indeed, as a young man, to be able to achieve such a degree, Kurosaki Ichigo was already very amazing. Who said that it was a coincidence? Ichigo. What? You are so noisy. I can handle him just a little bit. Don't bother me. Looking at his son, the corner of Kurosaki Ishin's heart suddenly showed a smile of relief. Sorry, Captain Aizen, did I interrupt your conversation? Squinting at Aizen, Ikemara Jin smiled and asked. It doesn't matter, our conversation is just over. Dad, what is that? What the hell is going on? Seeing what happened to Aizen, plus the feeling of oppression, Kurosaki Ichigo shouted at Kurosaki Ishin. How do I know? When I was about to say that I couldn't understand what he was talking about, you suddenly flew over, so the result is that I still don't understand anything. What do you mean you don't know? Isn't the person who was fighting with him just now you? Don't make a big noise. If you want to know, just ask Aizen directly. It's so troublesome. This is evolution. Looking at Kurosaki and his son who were arguing, Muyang said. What? Hearing Muyang's words, the father and son in the dispute turned their eyes and looked at Muyang. Yes, this is indeed an evolution. Glancing at Muyang, Aizen said, really, the name Hijayaku is really good. This is the power that will completely destroy the eternal horizon between God and non-God. Just as Aizen spoke, more white unknown substances wrapped around his body and wrapped his body, giving him a strange feeling. Sizzle. A red light suddenly appeared and penetrated Aizen's body. Finally, Kisuk. Muyang looked up. On the building behind Aizen, Kisuk stood there with a cane. His other hand covered his hat. His eyes under the brim of the hat were full of seriousness and seriousness. Long time no see, Aizen, I haven't seen you for a while, and your dress has become very strange. The expression on his face relaxed, and Kisuk said in a teasing tone. Anything is ugly on the way of evolution. Between words, the wound on Aizen's shoulder that was sneak attacked by Kisuk has recovered. I didn't say that you looked ugly. You just fused with Hijayaku. The eyes fell on Hijayaku that gradually integrated into Aizen's body, and Kisuk said in a strange tone. It's not a fusion. It should be said that the Hogyoku submit to me. Since Kisuk appeared, Aizen put most of his spirit on the other side. Even Muyang and Kurosaki Ishin, who were standing on the side, were unconsciously ignored by him. At this time, he turned directly to Kisuk, and his eyes showed some pride. That Hijayaku you can't control at the beginning. Ah. With a chuckle, it seemed that he was amused by Aizen's statement. Kisuk habitually reached out and pressed his hat. I can't control it, it is true, at that time. At that time. Hearing Kisuk's words, Aizen could not help laughing. It is really obvious that you don't admit defeat. However, whether you die or not, it doesn't matter, because the body suddenly disappeared from the place, and then directly appeared in front of Kisuk. Aizen's Zanpakuto inserted from Kisuk's chest. You have lost the opportunity to control Hijayaku forever. Pine. In front of Kisuk, the body suddenly expanded and then burst, and Aizen's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise, and then a hand suddenly attached to his body from behind. 6 feet like prison. Kisuk said softly. 6 pieces of light suddenly appeared and bound Aizen's body. Then Kisuk moved his feet and his body retreated a few steps away. He looked at Aizen, whose face was still calm. Do you think you can trap me with this level of Bakud? This level of Bakud? What is this level? On one side of the body, the cane in Kisuk's hand was aimed at Aizen's body. Bakud number 63, Saj Sabaku. Bakud number 79, Koyoshibari. The 2 Bakud were released in succession, and after temporarily trapping Aizen's body, Kisuk stretched out his arm, and a long line of lincture spat out from his mouth. Limit of the Thousand's hands, respectful hands, unable to touch the darkness. Shooting hands unable to reflect the blue sky. The road that basks in light, the wind that ignited the embers, time that gathers when both are together, there is no need to be hesitant, obey my orders. Light bullets, 8 bodies, 9 items, Book of Heaven, Diseased Treasure, Great Will, Grey Fortress Tower. Aim far away, scatter brightly and cleanly when fired. Hearing the words spoken by Kisuk, Aizen's eyes flashed with a touch of surprise. All had above 90 are all extremely powerful, even he is not willing to take the hat. Do you think I will let you use that kind of Kido? That kind of thing. Too late. Had number 91, Senju Tentei. As the last words in Kisuk's mouth came out, an attack with a terrible fluctuation shot toward Aizen's body. The flames produced by the explosion dyed the whole sky red, and the explosive air blew the buildings in the city to shake. So powerful. Looking at the amazing momentum in the air, Kurosaki Ichigo swallowed a mouthful of saliva and murmured. Although he knew that Kisuke Urahara was not simple, he did not expect to be strong to this extent. He could fight Aizen to this extent just by had. Aizen, it seems that you really began to get careless after getting the power of Jayaku. You are right. As soon as Kisuke's voice fell, a familiar voice suddenly sounded behind his head. It was Aizen's voice. There was a flash of shock in his eyes. Kisuke had just turned his body, and Aizen's arms suddenly waved, leaving a deep scar on his abdomen, and blood splashed. Because I have long been indifferent and there is no need to be on guard. As long as I rely on my feeling, this body made by Jayaku has begun to be far above my ability that no one can defeat in Soul Society. Feeling the powerful strength in the body, Aizen was intoxicated. The body was filled with unprecedented strength, and he felt that he was omnipotent now. Now even the Kido above 90 could touch me. You are wrong. I said that I was relaxed, not that you did not dodge my Kido. Looking up at Aizen, Kisuke's eyes flashed a trace of wisdom, and the eyes that saw through everything made Aizen's heart jump. If it was you before, it would be impossible to be unprepared. Kisuke's voice just fell, and a halo suddenly appeared on Aizen's wrists, wrapping around his wrists. This is... Feeling what happened to himself, Aizen's eyes showed a trace of shock. Seal. I have sealed the exit of all the Ryuryoku on Shinigami's hands. Kisuke reached out to hold his hat. A cold killing intent flashed through his eyes that were hidden under the shadow of the hat. You will be burned to ashes by your own Ryuryoku from the inside. Boom. Boom. As if responding to Kisuke's words, just as Kisuke's voice fell, Aizen's body suddenly burst out a violent explosion, and the flame column caused by the explosion rushed to the sky. Wow, Kisuke. Looking at Kisuke who fell to his side, Muyang praised. This is not enough. Hearing Muyang's praise, there was no joy on Kisuke's face. What? Can't you kill him like this? Hearing Kisuke's words, Kurosaki Ichigo was stunned. He originally thought that this was the end of the matter. After such an explosion, could Aizen still be spared? If you think this can end, it is too naive. In this case, he is no different from ordinary monsters. He will soon appear again. After listening to Kisuke's words, Kurosaki Ichigo subconsciously turned his line of sight to Flame Pillar. Then he was shocked to see a figure surrounded by white unknown matter coming out of Flame Pillar. Although he could not see his face, everyone knew that it was Aizen. Only, after experiencing that terrible attack, Aizen was actually unscathed. Step. With a step, the white Aizen directly appeared in the distance beside several people. The few people present were all experts, but no one saw how Aizen moved. It gave people the feeling that he had been here all the time. Lure me to attack with the had number 90, use the moves that I have launched, let me attack from the inside. If your opponent is not me, no, it should be said that if not for me who had already assimilated with Jayaku, the battle would have ended. A slightly strange voice came from this white humanoid object. Although there was a slight change, it was indeed Aizen's voice, but his voice became more confident. But unfortunately, the Jayaku you created has exceeded your understanding. In order to fight with me, this move created cannot do anything to me. While speaking, Aizen reached out and took off the two things on his wrist, crushed them, and then looked up at Kisuke in front of him. This was the only person in Soul Society who could be compared with him in terms of IQ. Click. Without saying a word, Kisuke reached out and pulled out his Zanpakuto, threw the scabbard to the side, and his face was cold. After the move failed, you have to rely on your strength? No problem. Looking at Kisuke, who pulled out his sword in front of him and intended to shoot directly, Aizen's face looked indifferent. Just when Kisuke just pulled out Zanpakuto and was ready to attack, Kurosaki Ishin, who was standing behind Aizen, suddenly stepped forward and took the first step to cut Aizen's back. The body leaned forward and the left foot was pushed back. Aizen blocked Kurosaki's sneak attack with a high difficulty position, and then waved his sword to block Kisuke's attack without any effort. The body shook and the bodies of the two people flew out. When the body flew out, a small chain appeared in the hands of Kisuke and Kurosaki at the same time. It wrapped around Aizen's wrists and ankles and pulled his body. What does this mean? This. Boom. Before Aizen's voice fell, a figure fell from the sky, and a heavy fist slammed down, smashing his body into the ground. Boom. Unprepared, Aizen's body and the ground collided. Because of Yoruiki's punch, the body even directly sank into the ground. Bastard. Yoruichi. The body lost control in an instant because of the attack, and Aizen couldn't help but open his mouth to scold. Originally, he put most of his attention on Muyang. After all, until now, he did not see through Muyang. Although he admitted that he would not lose to Muyang, he had to guard against it. Who knew that he would actually be attacked by Yoruichi suddenly? There was a flash of light in her eyes. Yoruichi shouted, and her fist fell like a storm. Each blow was powerful and heavy. She poured her strength on Aizen mercilessly. Under the fierce and dense attack, the rest of Aizen ground shattered, and the surrounding buildings fell because of the violent impact. How is it? Is it a little effective? After an attack, Yoruichi sat on Aizen's back with one knee and looked at Aizen, who had a layer of white substance cracked by herself, whispered. After such a heavy blow from her, she did not believe that Aizen could still bear it. Yoruichi, hurry up and get out of the way. Kisuke, who had been watching over there, suddenly opened his mouth and shouted anxiously to Yoruichi. Hearing Kisuke's call, Yoruichi's body paused, and just as she paused, a powerful light column suddenly rose from Aizen, and then Yoruichi saw herself covered by the light column on the leg, which was quickly dissolved by Kisuke's special leg guard. Yoruichi quickly retreated and ran in front of Kisuke. In the face of this monster, it was safer for two people to stay together. What's wrong? Is your attack over? It's best to hurry up. Before breaking your last attack, I will break your attacks one by one. Although there were some cracks on the white substance on the surface of the body, Aizen looked as if he was not affected at all. The tone was still arrogant and the aura emitted from his body was still strong. In order to defeat me, you must have drawn up a lot of means. That is the proof of your efforts and strength. Moreover, that also represents the size of your hope. What I should do now is to break all your attacks and continue to make moves. Yoruichi, Kisuke, Kurosaki, and Kimura. Eyes turned to the place where Muyang was originally. Aizen's calm eyes suddenly flashed a trace of surprise, and Muyang's body disappeared, without him noticing. Puchi. A Zanpakuto suddenly pierced Aizen's body, half of the blade out of his chest, and the bright blade seemed to be mocking Aizen's previous remarks. Really? I didn't expect you to be so slow. I have already launched my attack, Aizen. You. This guy when? The head turned and looked at the hateful face behind him. Aizen's eyes flashed a trace of anger, and he was actually sneak attacked by Muyang. When? Naturally, it is when you are talking big. Zanpakuto flashed with silver light, Muyang's arm tightened, and he cut horizontally, wanting to cut Aizen's body from the chest into two pieces. Ridiculous. Suddenly reached out and grabbed Muyang, who was inserted in his chest, and there seemed to be a flame burning in Aizen's eyes. Do you want to leave like this after hurting me? With a turn of his arm, Zanpakuto in Aizen's hand swept down toward Muyang's body. When? A Zanpakuto suddenly cut in from one side. Holding Aizen's Zanpakuto, it was Kurosaki Ishin who was watching closely. Lifting his foot, Aizen swept Kurosaki Ishin with one foot. With his strength, as long as this foot went down, he could definitely kick Kurosaki Ishin out. Boom! Aizen's foot had just been raised and had not been waved out. Yoruchi body suddenly appeared and punched Aizen's head. I said that you are not my opponent. Your fist has no effect on me. The body shook, and a stronger force erupted from Aizen's body, kicking Kurosaki Ishin's body with a flying kick. Aizen's arm turned, and easily held Yoroiki's fist, facing him now. In other words, boxing at this level doesn't work at all. Shunko. Aizen's arm just came into contact with Yoroiki's fist. Yoruchi's mouth suddenly spat out such a word, and then there was a flash of lightning, and a powerful momentum burst from Yoruchi. The fist, which was already very powerful, suddenly became stronger and smashed Aizen's arm on his face. Bastard! With an unwilling cry, Aizen's body involuntarily took a step back, and the palm that was holding Kimura Muyang's zanpakuto was also momentarily slackened. Taking the opportunity to draw out his zanpakuto, Kimura Muyang's body was short, letting Aizen's backward body beaten by Yoruchi, and a palm was placed on Aizen's side, and there was a flash of light in the palm of her hand. Thunder Roar Cannon. With a hit, Muyang's body immediately retreated. Looking at Aizen, who was once again drowned by the explosion, serious but not relaxed at all. Aizen, that guy, even if he was pierced through his chest by his own zanpakuto, he could still do so many things. It was really hard to imagine how strong he was. You guys. The body just came out of the explosion, and before Aizen finished his words, Kisuke's body suddenly came out from behind him. Shibari, Beneheim. Zanpakuto in his hand swung, and a net fell from the sky, making Aizen's body comfortable. Trying to trap me with this move. Being hit by Kisuke's attack, Aizen did not worry at all, the tone was still calm, and the wound that was pierced through by Muyang before his chest had disappeared. Hyasobi, Beneheim, Juzutsuneji. All the nodes wrapped around Aizen suddenly expanded, and then a violent explosion suddenly occurred, drowning Aizen's body again. Ridiculous, is this move already a unique skill? It is stronger than the last time. Even if he was hit by such a violent explosion distance, Aizen's figure was only slightly embarrassed, and he disdainfully commented on Kisuke's attack. As soon as the voice fell, a figure appeared behind Aizen. It was Kurosaki Ishin, who was holding zanpakuto high, and his zanpakuto was wrapped in a layer of powerful Ryoryoku. This was obviously an attack that he had been charging for a long time. Getsuga Tensho. The light of the knife appeared, and the violent impact broke out from the zanpakuto of Kurosaki's single-minded, sending Aizen's body flying out and drowning in a strong explosion. How is it? I don't know. After turning into that appearance, Aizen's Ryoryoku is completely unreadable. He is indeed powerful to the point of making people feel terrible. However, when he chopped at him, he felt that there was no one there. It felt very strange. Looking at the still extinguished exploding flame in front of him, Kurosaki Ishin was serious. Facing such an enemy, it was really not a pleasant thing. This slash is indeed powerful. I also understand the attack just now. Accompanied by a clear sound of footsteps, Aizen's body came out of the explosion and a gap was made on his face by the slash just now. Through the gap, one could see an unknown substance shaking inside. Just seeing it made people feel a terrible sense of oppression. What is inside? What is the change in his body? Well, it's almost time for you to understand my strength. In front of his chest, Aizen's tone was full of conceit. In his view, the four people opposite him had no way to stop themselves no matter what. Although I don't want to interrupt you at this time, is it really good to be so confident? Just as Aizen was ready to show his skills, Muyang's voice suddenly sounded. Huh? Pretending to be mysterious? Turning to look at Muyang, Aizen's eyes showed a trace of probing. It was already at this time. Did Muyang think that he could do something with some small means? Really, you haven't felt it until now? It really disappoints me. After feeling Aizen's probing eyes, Muyang opened his mouth and said, his tone revealing a bit of ease. I just left something in your body. I thought you would be able to detect it immediately, but I didn't expect you to be so slow, and I have to remind you. The pupils suddenly contracted. Aizen was just about to speak, and a dark light suddenly appeared from his chest. This is... Looking at the familiar thing that appeared from his chest, Aizen's eyes showed a touch of surprise. It was actually this thing. It was just a casual thing. I didn't expect to use it in this place. Looking at the thing that appeared on Aizen's chest, Muyang repeated what he had heard from the enemy not long ago. The black flame of despair will not burn or explode, but will assimilate everything it touches until the target is captured, and it will turn into nothingness. Before the target is captured, the black flame will never disappear. It's the same even if the person who activated the spell dies. What appears on your chest now is what Watanabe left behind before he died. Those black flames will devour everything it touches. Even I have no good solution, so I can only seal it up, but after all it's not a long-term solution, I'll give it to you now. You're welcome. I think your body should have been swallowed by black flames now, no matter if there is still a body in your body or something strange. Damn it! You bastard! Looking at Muyang, the anger in Aizen's eyes almost turned into substance. Ah! With a roar, chains of black flames surged out of Aizen's body, and his body disappeared little by little under the black flames, devoured and assimilated by those black flames. This is... Looking at Aizen, who was gradually drowned by a black flame, Kisuke and the other two walked to Muyang's side, and asked with some surprise in their tone. This was not Kido, and they had never heard that Muyang would use such a move before. This is something I inherited from my enemy. Casually explaining to the three of them, Muyang did not want to say more about the dock at the ferry. His eyes were staring at Aizen, and Muyang did not dare to relax at all. He knew that Aizen was difficult to deal with. After fusing with Jayaku, he was almost an unkillable existence. Noticing that Muyang's face was still nervous, his eyes stared at Aizen without blinking. Kisuke and the other three also turned their eyes. They had already deeply touched Aizen's difficulty in the previous fight. Damn it! Muyang, you bastard! The body half knelt on the ground. Aizen raised his head and roared. Muyang and others could clearly see that half of Aizen's body had almost disappeared. On his chest, Jayaku was still flashing with a mysterious light, giving out a rhythmic rhythm, like a heartbeat. Kisuke, can you take his Jayaku now? Looking at Jayaku who was fighting in the air, Muyang pursed his lips, and then asked Kisuke on the side. No, his fusion with Jayaku has begun, and now it can't be interrupted, at least for the time being. And I don't understand this. Even if you let me do it, I don't know what to do. Is that so? It's really a pity. Hearing Kisuke's answer, Muyang shook his head. Now it seems that he can only rely on strength to deal with Aizen. However, Aizen is already so powerful now. If he continues to evolve, can his side really block it? Muyang was still thinking about what Aizen would become next. Kisuke on the side suddenly let out a suppressed cry of surprise. What's wrong? Hearing Kisuke's voice, Muyang looked up and saw a majestic purple Ryoryoku burst out from Aizen. The black flames were destroyed and disappeared under the oppression of the purple Ryoryoku. The thing that once made Muyang helpless was solved by Aizen just by Ryoryoku. This guy. While speaking, Aizen's body that had been swallowed by the black flames and assimilated gradually recovered. The complexion changed, and the four people simultaneously retreated a distance. Then they looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. The other side had not yet made a move, and the few people on their side actually retreated a large distance at the same time. In terms of momentum, they were already much weaker than the other side. I really should thank you, Muyang. If not for you, I would not have passed the chrysalis stage so quickly. Originally wrapped around the body, the white matter that tightly wrapped the whole body shattered, revealing the face of Aizen. With a smile on his face, Aizen looked at Muyang and said in a soft tone. Chrysalis. Hearing the words that Aizen spat out, everyone was stunned. What did he mean? Then, in return, I will use my Zanpakuto to personally send you off. Just as several people were still thinking about Aizen's words, Aizen suddenly raised his Zanpakuto. The light flashed, and there was no time to react at all. Yoruichi's body had been swept out by a sword pressure and knocked down several buildings along the way. Yoruichi! A cry of concern came out of his mouth, and before Kisuke could do anything, Aizen's foot had kicked his stomach and kicked his body out. Damn it! Getsuga Tensho! Seeing that Aizen sent two people flying in a flash, Kurosaki Ishin raised his Zanpakuto up. The dark blue Ryuryoku gathered on Zanpakuto, a sharp aura condensed, and slammed down on Aizen's body. The light of a grain of rice. You dare to fight for the glory of the moon. Facing the chop of Kurosaki, Aizen's face flashed a trace of disdain. With a wave of his hand, a huge chop came from his Zanpakuto, smashing the Getsuga Tensho of Kurosaki Ishin, and also threw his body out. However, the fact that you dare to draw your sword in front of me is worthy of praise. Although it is just an insignificant power, it is at least much better than those who dare not to do it. Do you think so, Muyang? Turning to look at Muyang, there was a trace of mockery in the blue-purple eyes. In vain, he paid more attention to Muyang. Who knew that when Kisuke and the other two launched an attack on him, Muyang actually did not move at all. Don't dare to make a move. Hearing Aizen ridicule himself, Muyang first laughed, and then nodded. Yes, I really didn't dare to make a move just now. Who knows when you will activate Kyoka Suigetsu? It would be bad if you were caught in an accident. What an interesting excuse. Do you think I still need to use Kyoka Suigetsu? I can easily deal with all of you just by relying on my strength. In that case, you won't be able to use Kyoka Suigetsu anymore. Then I'm relieved. Although I have some ideas about how to deal with you, it will still be a bit troublesome in the end. Interesting. Do you still want to boast even now? What you said is like as long as I don't use Kyoka Suigetsu, you will be able to defeat me. Of course. Swish. The figure flashed, Aizen's body appeared in front of Muyang, and Zanpakuto's blade in his hand clung to Muyang's body. Now do you still think you can defeat me? The corners of the mouth were slightly raised, and Muyang's face showed a confident smile. Of course. With a flick of his body, the Zanpakuto that passed Aizen's hand suddenly moved, and the Zanpakuto in Kimura Muyang's hand suddenly turned into an afterimage, and the naked eye could hardly catch the slightest trace. When? With a single slash, Aizen's Zanpakuto was thrown away. Kimura Muyang was short and stepped, and he had already bullied himself to Aizen's body. He clenched his fist with his left hand and swung it towards Aizen's body. The fist is useless to my body. I think you should have seen the end of Yoruichi before. Looking at the fist that Muyang waved in front of him, Aizen's face showed a faint smile, his body did not dodge, and he intended to take the blow of Muyang. Seeing Aizen's reaction, Muyang's mouth was slightly raised. If Aizen could really take his own attack, maybe it would really make him suffer a double blow. Even if he lost the fighting will, it was not impossible, but his strength was not what he imagined. Shunko. A ball of light suddenly burst on Muyang's body, and the fist that was waved suddenly changed. A wave of air ripples spread from Muyang's fist. Boom! Being punched in the face, the faint smile on Aizen's face suddenly froze, and the body almost flew out at the moment of being hit. Bang! At this time, there was a muffled explosion in the air. The body twisted, and the footsteps dragged a long trace on the ground. Aizen's face was very ugly. He did not expect that Muyang's strength was so strong, and he did not expect that he had such a skill. Damn it, that bastard. What is? Looking up, Aizen was shocked to find that Muyang's body disappeared in his vision. Boom! A sense of crisis suddenly rose in his heart. Aizen body tilted, Zanpakuto in his hand raised and collided with Zanpakuto, which was waved down by Muyang. A violent fluctuation spread around with the place where the two fought. The arm holding the knife trembled, and Aizen's body sank slightly. The power from Muyang's Zanpakuto actually made him feel that he could not block it. Slash was blocked, Muyang's body turned, and a leg whip was pulled out, sweeping down on Aizen's head, and where the leg whip swept, even the air seemed to be burning. The corner of Aizen's eye glanced at Muyang's leg whip, and Aizen's arm raised and crossed with Muyang's leg whip. There was another violent roar, and the body fell to the side uncontrollably. In the contest of pure strength, he was actually at a disadvantage. How is it possible? Why do you have Shunko? And such a powerful strength? Standing firm, Aizen looked at Muyang in front of him with a face full of disbelief. Is it hard to understand? Muyang's whole body was wrapped in a ball of light, and he slowly approached Aizen. It's not a big deal that I can use Yoroikus move. There is no special restriction on this move. Besides, this move was originally completed in my practice with her. Stepping on the ground, Muyang's body disappeared from Aizen's sight again. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Aizen, and Zanpakuto in his hand rotated and cut into Aizen's body. Puff! A wound appeared on Aizen's chest. Impossible! I have subdued Hyaku. How can you be stronger than me? I should be on a higher dimension. In the roar, the Hyaku on Aizen's chest moved again, and a more powerful force poured out from Aizen's body, and the wound on his chest disappeared instantly. Yes, this is the power. Feeling that the strength in his body was stronger again, Aizen's face slowly calmed down. What he needed now was calmness. When? Waving his sword to block Muyang's slash, Aizen's face showed a smile again. Now his strength is completely not inferior to Muyang, and his strength is still rising, and soon will completely be above Muyang, becoming the supreme existence above Shinigami in Hollow. Muyang retreated and looked at Aizen. Muyang's eyes showed some caution. Through the collision just now, Muyang clearly felt that Aizen's strength became stronger, and he evolved again. The light wrapped around his body gradually dimmed and then disappeared. Muyang's breathing was slightly rapid. Oh. It seems that your Shunko cannot be maintained for too long. Moreover, the burden of using Shunko on your body is very big. Although it is powerful, it is not suitable for your own move after all. Seeing Muyang's performance, Aizen's eyes flashed a trace of understanding. Muyang himself is not like Yoruchi who is good at fighting. Even if he can use flash, he can't be as skilled as Yoruchi, let alone maintain that state for a long time. Then, it is almost over, this meaningless battle. As soon as the arm was lifted, Aizen slowly walked toward Muyang. Although the footsteps were light, it carried a terrible momentum. Kimura! Suzuki Kusu screamed, her body moved, and she was going to rush to Muyang. Although she knew that she could do nothing with her own strength, she could not watch Muyang being killed by Aizen. Swish! An arm suddenly stopped in front of Suzuki Kusu, blocking her body. Captain Unohana. She stopped and turned to look at Unohana Retsu, and Suzuki Kusu's eyes were a little angry. What do you mean by this? Even if you go over now, it will be useless. With your strength, you can't do anything at all. Moreover, there are other people here who need treatment. They have nothing to do with me. All I care about is Kimura. Get out of the way. Reaching out to push aside Unohana's arm, Suzuki Kusu's figure flashed, and before she could leave, a figure suddenly blocked in front of her. Stark. Looking at the person in front of her, Suzuki Kusu's face changed. Are you going to stop me? You can't go over. He reached out and blocked in front of Suzuki Kusu. Stark's face is a little serious, completely without the usual lazy color. I promised Kimura. I won't let you be hurt. Moreover, if you really want to help, it should not be you. Let's go, Lillinette. Turning around, Stark's body flashed away, and Lillinette quickly followed behind. Son, Apache, Mila Rose, you stay here. I go alone. Harabelle suddenly stood up and crossed her arms over her chest. Her golden hair fluttered in the air, and a trace of resolution flashed in the depths of her calm eyes. You. Looking at the few people who stood up and wanted to leave, Suzuki Kusu's lips moved. Before she could say anything, Harabelle in front of her suddenly spoke again. If there must be a sacrifice in this war, I hope it will be us, not you. You're indispensable for Lord Kimura. Suzuki Kusu paused for a moment. Then, she saw Harabelle suddenly turn her head. A slightly stiff smile appeared on her cold face. Of course. If it is possible, no one wants to sacrifice themselves. If we are injured and not dead, then I will have to trouble you with everything. After she finished speaking, she did not wait for Suzuki Kusu to reply. Harabelle rushed towards the battlefield. Her body trembled on the spot. Suzuki Kusu finally stopped her footsteps. She took a few steps back and sat down with his back against the corner of the wall. There was a glimmer of sparkling tears in the corner of her closed eyes. Chase, Los Lobos. A blue Ryuryoku suddenly broke out and rushed straight to the sky, and then several blue flashes came from the distance, covering Aizen's body, and even the surrounding retreat routes were all surrounded. It's useless. With a flick of his arm, Zanpakuto in his hand gently waved, and all the flashes that attacked Aizen were turned into ashes in the light blow of Aizen. Nanny. Seeing what happened in front of him, a trace of horror flashed in Stark's eyes. He never thought that his attack would be easily resolved in such a way. Really, a mere Arrancar, actually dare to attack me. Let me give you a chance, run quickly, with your strength, you are not qualified to attack me. Whether or not you are qualified is not up to you. With a flash of gloom in his eyes, Stark raised his arm and aimed the gun in his hand at Aizen opposite him. Unlimited Zero. Balls of blue Zero appeared in front of Stark, and then shot toward Aizen's body like a rainstorm. The constant shooting of Zero made the whole sky can't help but change color. Oh, it's a little interesting. There is actually a Arrancar of this strength, but why is it hidden in human world? If you come to my hands, you can at least rank in the top 3 in Espada. Looking at the airtight void flash in front of him, Aizen's eyes flashed a hint of surprise, then opened his mouth and said, such a dense void flash, even he did not want to get close. But, it is just like this. The body appeared on the side of Stark at some point, and Zanpakuto in Aizen's hand was raised. Just as Aizen's body just appeared next to Stark, a black muzzle was aimed at his head. Boom! An extremely thick flash came out of the muzzle. There are 2 guns. It is really amazing. It seems that my evaluation of you before has to be changed. Even if it is Arrancar, there are 1 or 2 powerful guys. Aizen walked out of the smoke of the explosion, leaving some scars on his body. Although he just dodged at the last moment, he was still inevitably affected. Of course, this degree of scar was really insignificant for him. It's absurd. He was hit directly by that degree of Zero and only suffered such a small injury. Looking at Aizen who was almost unscathed, Stark rubbed his hair and felt helpless. Broken waterfall. Accompanied by the sound of waves, a strong sea current like a tsunami poured down from the sky like a broken waterfall, and the rolling water seemed to want to smash everything. Ridiculous, such a thing is also embarrassing. His body did not even move, Aizen did not turn his head, just waved his hand, and the water flow from the sky was suddenly cut in half by him. It fell from both sides of his body and hit the ground, turning the already messy city into a pool of water. Poochie. A Zanpakuto suddenly stabbed out from the water on the side. It pierced through Aizen's back and once again penetrated Aizen's chest. Looking at the familiar half of the blade coming out of his chest, Aizen was almost mad. Since the start of the war, how many times had he been pierced by Muyang? Bastard! A burst of purple Ryuryoku burst out, and the suppressed purple Ryuryoku spread with eyes and body as the center. All the things around him were turned into ashes in an instant. The face changed, and Muyang moved his arm and was about to pull out his own Zanpakuto to retreat. Ha! The arm just moved, but from the other side of Zanpakuto, there was suddenly a powerful force, which clamped down on Muyang, making him unable to pull it out. This time no one can create an opportunity for you, Muyang, you are dead. Turning his head back, looking at Muyang standing behind him, Aizen's face showed a deep killing intent. Stark raised his arm, and the two guns in his hand constantly fired Shiro at Aizen, but disappeared when he approached the purple Ryuryoku. The purple Ryuryoku could even melt Shiro. Damn, what should we do? In the current state, they can't get close to Aizen at all, and Muyang's Zanpakuto is still left in Aizen's body and can't be pulled out. What should we do under Aizen Ryuryoku? Kimura. Seeing the situation over there, Kurosaki Ichigo's eyes flashed a trace of anxiety. His father, Yoruchi, and Kisuke were all defeated by Aizen. Muyang was already the last hope. If he was also killed, what could he do alone? Was everything over? Ikemara Jin also stopped his movements and stood there, squinting at the place where Muyang and Aizen were. His face was calm, but the white knuckles revealed his inner restlessness. Would Muyang die under Aizen like this, or did he have some hidden cards that had not been revealed? It's over. Aizen, who grabbed Muyang's Zanpakuto with one hand and his own on the other hand, waved down at Muyang's head. Aizen looked down at Muyang with the posture of a winner. In the heart of Aizen, he has already won, regardless of whether Muyang has escaped his attack or not. If Muyang still holds Zanpakuto, he will be cut by his own knife, no escape, and if he gives up Zanpakuto to escape, it is only a matter of time for him to lose and die. The blade is close to Muyang's body, the next moment will cut through his body and cut him into two pieces. Shwa. The left hand still holding his own Zanpakuto, Muyang's right hand suddenly waved, and a silver light appeared in his hand. Wang. The Zanpakuto in his hand was blocked, and eyes and pupils suddenly contracted. The calm color on his face disappeared, revealing a kind of undisguised horror. Taking advantage of Aizen's surprise, Muyang suddenly exerted strength in his hand and pulled out his Zanpakuto, which was inserted in Aizen's chest. With a wave of his hands, a cross-shaped slash suddenly struck out, slashing at Aizen's body, and he himself took advantage of the power to quickly retreat, out of the range of the purple Ryuryoku released by Aizen. Boom! In a violent explosion, Muyang landed on the ground with a sword in both hands. His breath was steady. That is. Seeing Zanpakuto in Muyang's hands, everyone was shocked. Your Zanpakuto. Walking out of the explosion, Aizen's body was slightly embarrassed, but his eyes were staring at Zanpakuto in Muyang's hands. Yes, this is my Zanpakuto. With a chuckle, Muyang raised the Zanpakuto in his hand. The one in his left hand was the Zanpakuto he had been using all this time. However, the double-edged blade at the tip of Zanpakuto's blade had turned into a single blade. In his right hand, there was also a Zanpakuto. The thin blade was completely different from the usual Zanpakuto. The only difference was that this Zanpakuto's entire body was a double-edged blade. Hakaz, Windbreaker, no Kiru and Hiten, Skypiercer.